Hey everyone, my name is David Jackson. I've been a developer, architect, or some sort of technology role in Fidelity Investments for almost 25 years. It kind of scares me to say that. Currently, I lead the cloud automation and tooling squad, really, and we sit within a core kind of cloud and platform engineering group within Fidelity itself. I'll just move on. Right, so a little bit about Fidelity. Actually, what I should have mentioned is what am I going to talk about today. So what we're going to talk about is a very quick overview of how we approached and how we executed a very large-scale migration from Terraform Community Edition over to OpenTofu. But first, a quick note about who Fidelity are. So Fidelity Investments is a US-based financial services firm. We provide a range of interconnected services, anything from asset management to personal institutional investing, brokerage services, all mainly within the US itself. We're headquartered in Boston, Massachusetts. And we've got sites right across the US, and we have a number of regional sites supporting the business as well, including in Ireland, where I am currently based. So Fidelity has a long history of technology innovation, and we've had a serious cloud footprint for quite a number of years now. And that basically means we've got a lot of infrastructure as code to manage. And that's both cloud native infrastructure as code, as well as a growing use of Terraform and now OpenTofu as well. So when it comes to Terraform, we've always used the open source or the community edition of Terraform to date. It's been getting quite popular over the last few years within Fidelity, and just to give it a sense of the scale, we now have well over 2,000 applications using Terraform and OpenTofu. Between them, they probably account for well over 50,000 individual state files. And if you combine all those together, they're really looking after about over 4 million individual resources deployed. From an activity perspective, we generally see over 4,000 applies or state file updates happening on a daily basis. So we knew when we were starting a migration to OpenTofu, we had quite a large scale to consider when we were actually making that move. So before I go into the details of how we did that migration, it's really nice timing today that this morning across Fidelity, we flipped our default CLI from Terraform to OpenTofu, meaning that all, thank you. Yeah, we're very pleased with that. Meaning that all Terraform projects, or formerly Terraform projects, are now using, by default, the CLI. Not quite 100% of projects will be using that. We will have some outliers, and we'll look to nail that down. So it's been about a year's worth of effort from our very first POC into Tofu through an enablement phase and through multiple quarters of an opt-in period to get to this point. So how did we actually get here? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through 5 key phases as quickly as I can in terms of how we approached and how we executed that migration. And really start with an initial POC, right? Prove to yourself, as the guys were talking about earlier, that Tofu really is the drop-in replacement for Terraform that you think it is. Now, beyond just can I deploy resources, though, at this kind of scale, and like in an enterprise that we are, you need to think about integrations into some of your key platforms, like CI/CD platform, artifact management. We've got some fairly robust governance processes in there as well. So see if it's going to work with all those things as well. And once that looks good, go and pick out a lighthouse project, right? Show the way with one of your own projects. So we picked one of our own IAC platform applications that our team manages, and we converted that to OpenTofu. Now, what was important about that is that we didn't just do that in a dev or a test environment. We pushed that all the way to production. We wanted to make sure that anything in our internal processes didn't get in the way of using OpenTofu itself. So once that looked good, we moved on to socializing the idea with the decision makers in our organization. Now, organization as large as ours, it could be like a guild, a DevOps council that we have, or indeed, some other decision-making body that you might have in your organization. So start sharing information about a proposed OpenTofu move. We talked about the pros and cons, and then eventually we looked to gain a consensus to move forward with that migration. And once we have that, we're moving into enablement phase. So we implemented support, tooling, documentation that teams would need in order to migrate to OpenTofu. We tried that out on our Lighthouse project and made sure that that was working fine. And then we made that generally available to the development community within Fidelity. And that really moved us in towards our adoption phase. Now, really important around that time was to create robust reporting so that it was really clear and transparent with our users how the adoption was going. And that really helped us in terms of encouraging early adopters. They saw they're not first, and that everything was going successfully so far based on the data, and that encouraged them to move. But we also specifically worked with key partners within the organization itself. So the major Terraform users, to get them migrating early as well. And by doing that, we were able to get to over 70% of projects moving to Tofu during an opt-in period that we ran over multiple quarters. Right, that gave us a lot of confidence that we were moving in the right direction, and that eventually, when the rest of the teams did pick up the migration, that they wouldn't run into problems. So, as I mentioned, we flipped that default this morning. Okay, so all teams now, unless they're really opting out, are using the OpenTofu CLI in their automated pipelines, which is great. So that was really the first step to consolidate the versions of CLIs that are being used within Fidelity. So we don't want to run in a long-term two-track system where we've got two different CLIs. You've got a Terraform and OpenTofu CLI long-term in the enterprise. From a support perspective, that just makes things even harder, right? So we want to start consolidating that now. And really what we're going to do next is start deprecating the older versions within Fidelity. We can do that because we have automated governance checks when you deploy to the cloud. And gradually we'll phase out those versions, and soon we'll get to a point where we have a single track system with OpenTofu CLI only, and hopefully a consistent version of that as well going forward. Okay. Hopefully I captured everything and didn't forget anything. So that's how we approach the migration itself. I want to leave just with 3 quick tips from that experience. Maybe would help you if you're also considering a similarly large-scale migration. And the first off, and I think this was mentioned earlier, really it really was a drop-in replacement, right? The effort in any migration was not in the Terraform code itself. It was more in your automated CI/CD pipelines. And really then, it was only just changing the CLI, right, that was in that build environment. Commands were the same, no major changes there. But if you have the luxury of having shared or common pipelines that multiple projects are using, it definitely makes your life so much easier, because obviously one central change there means that multiple teams are migrating without having to do anything at all, which is happening to a lot of our teams this morning. Secondly, around CLI versioning, so the more consistent you can get with the spread of different CLI versions that might be used in your organization before you make that move to Tofu, the easier that migration is going to be, because you've got more consistency and less variance as you move forward. Certainly at the scale that we operate at, you're more likely to have outliers doing maybe something unusual with Terraform, or using maybe a particularly old version. So the more you can consolidate that, you get much more confidence from the early adopters that the majority who are coming after that will have a similarly seamless experience. Okay, and finally, data is key. Okay, track progress, work with your trusted partners, be transparent with that data and set yourself up for success in the migration. So, as I said earlier, if having that data and being transparent with it will give confidence to, from observing the success of the early adopters, it'll give confidence to the rest of the organization that it really is a seamless switch for them. And then later on, being part of the minority who haven't yet switched is also a motivation. Right, and that's how we managed to get to such a high percentage of conversions before we did that default switch this morning. And ultimately, that just meant that really we only cared, like even today, we're really only looking at 20 to 30% of projects who have had a change made on them this morning with that default CLI. So that's about it. It was fairly rapid fire. Hopefully I'm in time. So that's really how Fidelity, in a nutshell, went from 0 to pretty much 100% OpenTofu usage. We got there through careful planning, consensus building, which is very important, a phased execution from an opt-in phase to the cutover this morning, and then use of reporting to track that progress as we go. So that's it. Thank you very much. Questions?
Yeah. Great overview, thank you. David, I think I heard, did I hear you when you said you had 70% adoption when you were in the opt-in phase?
How
did you do the evangelism? How did you convince everyone to do, like, how did that, like, any advice on the evangelism that you guys did to get to that number? Yeah,
we did a couple of things. So one thing I mentioned was we definitely targeted the major Terraform users. So there are spots with, like, Fidelity has got a lot of internal business units. So some of them were a lot heavier on Terraform than others. So we obviously focused on the really heavy users. We got their buy-in. We certainly discussed that with them before we even were proposing a move to OpenTofu to make sure they were on board. But then, really kind of worked hand in hand with them to migrate some projects, test the water, get a better feel for it. And that really, really helped jump the percentages when they got on board. Yeah.
What sort of objections, if any, did you get along the way?
That's a good question. We didn't get a lot.
Yes!
Right? Once
I rest my case.
The other quick thing I should have mentioned is that apart from targeting those major users, we did do a branding push internally as well. So there's a lot of different forums internally, and we're talking in all these different forums and giving out a lot of information. We branded all our services, our existing Terraform supporting services, like our own state backend and all these different services that we've got. We branded them under a little code name called Bento internally. And that really, it just kind of helped make it a real thing to users as we communicated that too.
We're a really distributed company, several thousand application dev teams, and they basically use everything from PowerShell scripts to Pulumi, Terraform, OpenTofu, and no central kind of infrastructure. Can you share something about, like, how is that shared infrastructure used by you, or do you have that kind of shared infrastructure where you have a single CI pipeline, for example?
Oh, yeah, sure. So we do have that. So there's various parts to what we're calling our internal Bento platform. Some of it is around pipelines, so standard pipelines to deploy that application. And it gives us that consistency, and really nobody should be spending time writing pipelines, right, to do that kind of thing. One of the really important things we put together was a catalog of reusable modules within the organization. We've got a rating system on those, like a maturity badging kind of thing. We're very transparent with the numbers in terms of how many applications are using those, how many internal business units are using those modules, so that as teams go to that central catalog that we host on Backstage, actually, they're able to get a good sense of what's going to be a good fit for them and what's battle tested as well. We've got a few other parts to it as well, but basically reusable ISE components, reusable pipelines. Thanks.
Hi, Scott Rainovich. I'm an analyst with Futurium. I'm curious, you didn't say much about why, so can you give us the background on why you decided to do this?
Yeah, I thought that question might come up. In general, over the last number of years, Fidelity has really embraced open source, right? So we've had a big move towards open source products. We do a lot of internal platform engineering, and we try and leverage and contribute to open source projects as part of that. right? So might have to finish on this one, sorry. So with that, right, and obviously we know there were license changes, right, around Terraform and stuff like that. So, part of the reason is we want to be part of a very strong looking OpenTofu community. We have started making contributions. We want to make more. We want to keep getting involved. And I think OpenTofu gives us that opportunity.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.